About 3.5 years ago, Gwinnett County approached us, and I will never forget going and meeting with the folks in leadership development and them sort of laying out their idea of what an authentic partnership between us and Gwinnett County Public Schools would look like. We would sit down with them and 4 other university partners, all of whom had been and continue to be both our colleagues and our competition, but at that point we really thought of them more as our competition. And we would all lay out our programs, our design, the way we recruited students, the way that we tracked those students once they finished. And then we would both self-assess our own program and work with the other university partners to critically assess one another's programs. I will never forget leaving that meeting and getting in my car, and my colleague was in his car, and we immediately called each other and spoke the entire way back to campus about the pros and cons of what at that time seemed to be perhaps the craziest thing we had ever heard. And in working in higher ed, that's saying something. So if you fast forward from that first meeting to today, we have a structure in place where not only do we serve as sort of colleagues and friends and go to recruitment fairs together and set our tables up next to each other, but we also provide things like course resources for one another. We've team taught in one another's courses. While the original idea behind this was really, let's figure out how to improve our program, it has increased exponentially to how can we continue to grow this model and put it out there in the state.
Where did this journey begin? I think I'd have to go all the way back 10 years ago, a decade ago, when the Wallace Foundation decided to get very specific in the venture and the initiative that they were pursuing around education leadership. It was at that time that Wallace commissioned a national research study. One of the major findings was that principals, second to teachers, had the most influence over student outcomes. And so with that wind at its back, Wallace decided to really invest heavily in principals, principal training, and principal impact on schools. What Wallace wanted was some way to assess what the state of principal preparation looked like across the country. And they commissioned EDC to design a few tools that were user-friendly, that programs could work with, wouldn't be intimidated by, and that was kind of the beginning of quality measures. We went out in 12 states, field tested, piloted the tool, and people began to just use it. And then in about 2013, they thought, well, what would happen if we brought principals together with providers? Because we're seeing that they could have a tremendous influence, and providers don't really understand the world of the acting principal. So what would happen if we pulled both of them together in a room and had them talk about problems and problem solve together? And that was the birth of the PLC.
So let me share with you a bit of background on PLCs and the charge for this one. What exactly is a PLC? At its heart, it's group learning. At Wallace, we've discovered over the years, through trial and error, how powerful a strategy it can be to regularly convene people working on the same issues. Properly structured and conducted, PLCs make our grantees more effective and allow us to develop knowledge and capture lessons jointly with our grantees and technical assistance providers. Collectively, we engage in an act of co-creation, with each member being simultaneously both teacher and learner. PLCs focus on a series of coordinated learning activities for a defined set of members and with specific purposes and outcomes that meet a strategic objective. We've also discovered some key guidelines for making PLCs effective. They must employ practices that establish and maintain a climate of mutual trust and respect, that allow for the immediate application of lessons learned, and that allow for learning that is based on the needs of the group as they evolve over time. Now, we have a tremendous amount to learn from each other in this group, and the benefits will accrue at a minimum of 4 levels. Training providers will learn from each other to make your individual programs even better. The principals you train will enter the workforce with more of the skills they need. Your school districts will benefit from a larger pool of leaders tailored to the special needs of an increasingly demanding job. And we at the Wallace Foundation will be constantly learning from you. And what we will learn will inform our work in the future and contribute to improving school leadership nationally. Each of you has done the difficult but important work of looking carefully at your programs to see what works, and you've developed your own plans on how to improve them. Effectively implementing those plans is now the task at hand. And this brings us back to the professional learning community we're launching today. It's an opportunity to work together to determine the best, most effective, most efficient ways to train the leaders our schools need. This is where the rubber hits the road.
Wallace had each of the 6 school districts identify 3 providers in their region. And then after the first year, Wallace was very pleased with what they were beginning to see happen. They asked the 6 school districts to identify an additional number of program providers in their area, thinking, wow, we've got this group really coming together. Let's get as many programs in there as the PLC can hold. We had 32 programs who were invested in quality measures. So what did they all have in common is what we had to find out. So they all went through their self-studies, and they all identified as the common theme for their program, graduate performance outcomes.
We found that an oversight was that we were not involving our program graduates, our principals. So this national PLC helped us to overcome that oversight. And based on the work that we've done here in Boston, we went back to Georgia and developed a local professional learning community with alumni principals in Gwinnett County Public Schools. And we had about 20.
Our participation in Wallace helped us to realize that our students, our graduates of the program, could be really important knowledge resources to us as we started to design a solution. We wouldn't have come up on that on our own. Wallace really encouraged that we form a graduate PLC. And when we formed that graduate PLC, our graduates met with me for a full year. We were identifying weak cycle of inquiry leadership in our candidates. That our candidates, when they were early career leaders, were struggling to be able to effectively use cycles to be able to find and solve school-wide instructional problems. We identified that.
How can a principal increase cycles of reflection to be more impactful in their role? And an outcome of that work, which was we would meet quarterly, and that was over the past 2 to 3 years that we've completed this work, a rubric was developed.
Lamont and I have been able to really sit down and have very concrete conversations about the work that he's doing. He's helping to inform and help us to really assess how we can support principals like him and also aspirants. And one of the things that I think we took away from it is being able to slow down, going back to the district and being able to give principals an opportunity to think about their learning.
Well, the framework of the quality measures gave us exactly what we needed at a critical time. And when we went through the self-examination process, we were able to put on the table, in the spirit of transparency, our gifts, our heritage, our flaws. And there they were, for all to see and for all to critique and for us to grow. And from that, we did grow. And in our local professional learning community at the university, we identified from that quality measures process that we needed to work on graduate performance outcomes. We had to be intentional. We couldn't just graduate and have a good feeling. We had to probe, we had to dig. And the tracking system has even made that more of a line of accountability. The good thing was that when we did look at our graduates, we were happy that they were making us proud. Indeed, they were, ambassadors. Dr. Walker was one of those.
What I found really powerful, and I first discovered it with these three organizations, was that the quality measures process sets up first an opportunity to talk about change. It provides a language to talk about change, and it provides a way of actually charting out how that change will occur and whether it has occurred.
It pushed us to ask questions that we had never thought to ask before, like especially questions about those graduate performance outcomes pieces. And I think we, like many institutions in our nation, felt like we did a pretty good job of preparing folks, and then they left and we moved on to the next group of folks to prepare. And so one of the things that the process really did for us was made us ask hard questions about how do we continue to engage our graduates after they've already left our building. How can we continue to give them professional development opportunities that are authentic and are things that they're going to be able to take back the next day and actually use within their buildings. And it also helped us drive the answers to those questions by going and asking our graduates, as opposed to us just sort of sitting in isolation and doing what we thought was best.
The cohesion was really, really interesting. The district was more engaged. The university representatives were more engaged. The energy was there. The commitment was there. And it extends all the way to their graduates again. The tools and processes are deceptively simple, and yet they can yield really powerful results.
I would say for districts and school or university preparation programs that are really serious and committed, really should think seriously about quality measures and a national and local professional learning community and building a partnership with their school districts and university.
There is a big divide between public ed and higher ed that I did not know existed. To go back between the two and to have the two talk to each other was really hard at first. Get the right people to the table when you first start to help guide the process, because it's going to be a journey. It's not going to happen right away. But if you have the right people from the school district and you have the right people from school houses, the leaders in those buildings, and you have the right people from the university so that everybody has a voice and everybody is part of that change process, then it's going to happen. Then, if you have an outside group, like the National PLC has been for us, to bounce those ideas off of and kind of be that guiding light, then you can expect things to happen much more quickly than if we just did it on our own.
It took us a while, and I think also with some expert facilitation, to get us past the point of thinking about what we had to prove as opposed to what we had to improve. And I think that was the kind of game changer for us, was that I can even remember the day when it happened, when we realized that we could actually come out and say the things we weren't good at, and then make commitments to improving those.
So we formed this World Cafe setting early on where we would put an issue on the table and then they would all get to go around and query their colleagues. We'd put tablecloths on the table and markers. So they went around and they loved socializing. They loved meeting people that they would never meet in any other context.
My favorite part of the Wallace Foundation work that we do up here is our World Cafes, and that's where other programs are sharing their best practices, what's working, what they tried, and what didn't work. So I learned a great deal from them and some strategies, especially because we're all large urban districts. So I was able to take some of those strategies back and immediately put them in to the school executive leadership program.
When other people share their stories of their challenges, their fears, their failures, then that can help people express theirs and get professional mentoring and learning from that. So it really opens up your worldview and your mind to see that wow, they're having similar challenges, sometimes even worse in a different district. And to be able to talk with people about how did you address that? How did you help to reduce that? That is really powerful. That's a very powerful factor that can emerge in a PLC.
The national PLC provided us an opportunity to learn together, but to share ideas and to go back and try new things and come back and talk about how successful or what the challenges of those particular new ideas may have been, along with problem solving together. If one particular district or university was really struggling with a particular idea around recruitment or graduate performance outcomes, we all came together and sort of shared what those challenges were and then offered different insights, as well as thinking about readings or what research was saying around those topics as well. So the National PLC almost became a breeding ground for us to share ideas and think about some of the challenges we were facing.
One of the interesting ahas for me was engaging the principals more actively in each and every session. Once we started having principal panels, and once the topics shifted to really focus on topics that were of interest to principals, with the universities observing how they could change their programs to reflect that content that seemed to mean so much.
So it challenged me to think about I'm only one person in the building, and I can't do all the work myself. So who are those leaders that are going to help get the work done, and what am I doing to build the capacity of those teachers in our building? So I would say a success for us is that distributed leadership occurring, that we're building capacity among the schools so that if I'm in the building or not in the building, the work will get done.
And the other thing that they really wanted us to do, charged us to do, was to concretize process and protocol in a way that would allow people to replicate back home, use the same tools, study the same subjects, collect data about their work. And so they had us form a national PLC, and then everyone that was invited was charged with forming a local PLC and funded to do so.
One of the things that the National PLC did very, very well was have protocols for the ways that we shared things, how information was distributed, how people had an opportunity to present their challenges. And then you want to be able to document what you're doing. I mean, there's a reality here in terms of supporting being able to share these ideas beyond the members of the PLC or, the national PLC. And to do that, you have to have documentation. The national PLC that was formed brought people together, but brought people together in a very specific way with protocols that we could take back and do with our local PLCs and hopefully make them as productive as I think we were.
It became really apparent that the whole topic of mindsets resonated with everyone in the room. We dealt with race and poverty around the same time, and they fit really well together because mindsets about race and how students learn and about poverty and whether poor kids can learn. And it was just the perfect storm for those two topics to come together, and people were making sense of it together in community and then taking it back.
It's a different population than it was 20 years ago. We need to think about that. What does that mean for how we approach our students who are English language learners, for gender differences, for differentiation and learning styles, for students with special needs? All of that has to be conscientiously considered in our programming.
We found out that people had a fear. They saw talking about race, gender, and poverty in a lens of fear. Because if I talk about it, I'm creating an ism. If I bring it up, I may create an ist. So the idea is that we wanted to have a place where people could share their ideas, value their ideas, and learn from that process. So it wasn't creating what I thought I knew about something, but just saying that that's a learning space for me. And I'm going to be okay learning here. And then I use what I've learned here to go to the very next level. So when we move from having an uneasy conversation about race, gender, and poverty to an easy or a more comfortable conversation about race, gender, and policy, we create a building where there's socially just leaders. And I think that's where we're going. What are the things that we're pulling together, and what are those things that create a mindset? And I truly believe that PLC has started us on this. It's a hard job. It's a long journey. And it's going to take individuals some time to revamp themselves and to look at themselves in a space that says that, I can do this.
So actually, the session theme was continuous improvement mindset. But to launch that discussion, we had to go into the research of Carol Dweck and her work, her seminal work on mindsets. And Carol teaches us many important lessons about the impact of having a fixed mindset on learning and the impact of having a growth mindset as it relates to learning. How does a teacher examine their own mindset? These kids can't learn. They never could. I'm a babysitter. I'm not going to try. So you look at the impact of that kind of a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset that says everybody can learn. All students can learn. It's a matter of taking them from where they are to another point. The undeniable fact that it was really important for a principal to understand the power of mindset as they work to raise student achievement. I think that explained why so many people found that particular session had resources and information that could be taken back immediately and used.
You are going to be future building level leaders. You need to know whether you have a set mindset or not, because if you have a set mindset, then your faculty is going to have a set mindset, and those teachers will have set mindsets about the students they teach. We don't want them to leave our programs with static, narrow-minded ideas. We want them to have broad, open ideas, and that's what we want to get them to understand. And I think this National PLC, the things that they have brought out, has helped us to do that.
Gwinnett County Public School is our district, and we partnered with 5 university training providers: University of Georgia, University of West Georgia, Georgia State University, Mercer University, and Clark Atlanta University, and Quality Plus Leadership Academy with Gwinnett County. And so we have found out that partnering with a district and these university training providers has been a win-win situation for both parties.
To provide a little context about our district in Gwinnett, we are the largest school district in Georgia, one of the largest in the nation. We have a little over 178,000 students, many accolades, more than we can mention, but most specifically the Broad Prize for Urban Education, a 2-time winner of that prestigious award. And so our challenge then has been, how do we leverage these partnerships with these universities, increase the effectiveness of the strategies that we're implementing to build and strengthen the partnerships to help us build a pipeline of leaders that can go into schools and that can be effective right away.
One thing we've learned is that even strong partnerships can be made better.
That's right.
So our principal graduates helped us develop relevant activities that address the work that a principal has to do today in the 21st century. And the Georgia Professional Standards Commission approved both our Tier 1 and Tier 2 programs with no requested revisions. And you know that's highly unusual.
That's outstanding.
Yes.
That was a definite outcome of this PLC, those authentic partnerships and that effective collaboration that occurred between our district and the university.
The work that we did with our university partners and sitting with them and talking about what they're doing in their preparation programs helped us guide what we do with those leaders after we get them into our pipeline. So that was a very powerful conversation, and doing the quality measures assessment with them and sitting with them and talking about those things helped align what they were doing as well with our 5 core competencies that we use to assess the performance of our leaders in our school district. University of Tampa is this year having their very first cohort of educational leadership students in a master's degree. So University of Tampa came to us and said, is there anything that you can do? And so we started trying to help them recruit people for their program. And then we said, well, wait a minute, here's another opportunity. So as we were helping them recruit people, we said, let's try to recruit our most highly effective teachers. And so we did that, and we took them through a vetting process. And they had to say that they were willing, if they got a part of the University of Tampa's master's degree program, to go to one of our challenging schools and work as a teacher, a highly effective teacher, in a very challenging school educational situation while they're working on their master's degree. And the University of Tampa, the principals at those schools are highly effective principals who have a proven track record of moving a school. Well, they're going to be mentoring those students while they're working on their educational leadership degrees. The University of Tampa is going to be supporting them by also looking at what are the practices that help the students the most in our most challenging situations. And then our office, the Leadership Development Office, is also going to be supporting them with coaches and mentors to help them as they're doing some of their critical tasks. What's so exciting about that is if we hadn't been part of this PLC and we had not sat at the table with our university partners to just start the first conversation, 6 years later, we wouldn't be at a point necessarily maybe to sit and have this conversation with them where we're working together to try to solve some of education's biggest problems. And we're doing it in our own community first, but hopefully it'll reap benefits for people in other communities. These PLCs and these partnerships is what's really moving this work, and it's just really exciting to be a part of it.
So you have the partnership with the district. That's clear. We understand that. The cherry on top that we did not expect was the rich relationships with the other universities where we could trade and lecture. So when it came to a course on diversity and equity, Georgia State said, listen, I'm bringing somebody in. And so we appeared on neutral territory, if there is such a thing, where we went to Gwinnett and we hosted that session, those sessions with the students. So there was an authenticity there. At the same time, Georgia State was doing a fantastic job with some of its organizational pieces. We invited them in, and Dr. Berry did a fantastic job with our organizational leadership class. Now, what did that do for the students? It said to them, collaboration is a rich opportunity.
And so over the course of the last 3 years that we've been in this learning community, our learning community in Gwinnett has met at least twice a year formally, where we've sat down, we've done some things around programmatic analysis and programmatic improvement, but really the meat of what we have done beyond that and beyond our time in Boston has been those connections that we've made, both those linear connections with Gwinnett County and those circular connections with the other university partners. And so the final sort of output of that partnership for this year will be that as a collective, we are all going to present at Gwinnett Summer Leadership on this idea of growth mindsets.
Well, I think the important thing that I saw occur here was the breaking down of silos that we have created in education. And so this experience gave us the space and the trust to take those silos down and really come together around the collective good of the profession.
We had a meeting where we invited all the interested parties that wanted to get a principal certification to this meeting, and there were 100 or so of those aspiring teachers, teacher leaders who wanted to be principals. And we had all the 5 programs in the room, and they were sharing what their program was like. And at the end of that evening, one of those professors came up to me and said, I would never have believed this. He said, for us to all be in the same room, talking openly and everybody hearing and seeing what our programs have to offer, and that it did not feel competitive. And that we all ended up with 20 or so of those folks wanting to register for our programs. And he had just pushed back and pushed back through this whole process. And to hear him say, it didn't feel competitive anymore. I felt like we all had something on the table and something to offer, and that my program had strengths that were different than somebody else's, but that we both had to address the same kind of issues in our programs. And so it really solidified my belief in what a professional learning community can do for lots of programs and how it can bring them together. And that's what we've seen in the one that we're working with now.
While we're friendly competition, we support each other's programs. So we've been helping each other with ideas, expanding our programs. I steal a couple of Mary's ideas, she steals a couple of mine, and we kind of use it just to do what's best for the interns and the kids.
The PLC tends to bring people up from, this is unique to me, to this is a systemic or a national issue that there's been research on. There are some smart people in this room that can help me with it. That has become a safe place to talk about issues and for people to say, gee, we're not really good at that. We're looking for our state to help us tracking graduates. And to say that in front of another university that is competing in some ways with you, that takes a very safe space to do it, and I think that the PLC has done that.
Out of our work here in Boston with this PLC, we had the great idea. It was a great synergy that was reached, I'd say, 2 or 3 PLCs ago, where we wanted to take what we were learning here and bring it on a larger scale. So we partnered with Johns Hopkins University, and we had a Greater Impact Conference. And so Prince George's County Public Schools is a part of that. NAESP, NASSP, and then several school districts from around the surrounding area were a part of that. And there was great interest in hearing about what we had learned from each other in this work. The thing that I have found most fascinating is seeing the collective capacity that's being built.
We feel we've set a rich example for replication in the concentric circles of the inner professional learning community, the outer professional learning community, and the umbrella professional learning community. This has been a model for significant change, and it takes away the ivory tower notion. It takes that away, and it shows that true collaboration is taking place.
This PLC has been able to help me to impact the field in ways that I wouldn't have been able to impact otherwise. It's generated my ability to write and disseminate to certain audiences findings from our work. It's allowed me to be a knowledge resource to many other programs well outside of the scope of this work here. If we can think more broadly about a PLC than just thinking about the people that are around the room, because everybody that's in that PLC ultimately has the ability to become a knowledge resource outside of that PLC and to other people that are less well connected.
The quality measures in the national PLC model is being replicated at the state level, where you have 5 university partners who've come together and have said, this works, and let us show you how, and has encouraged other universities to put more trust and to lean in a little bit more of the process. So quality measures and the power of relationships and collaboration versus competition with our university partners is something that I think will take off not only throughout our state, but I hope across the nation. I want to also say from the growth mindset from the university level, growth mindset has energized us and changed our thinking and the way that we do business in terms of how we deliver our programs, as well as the level of conversation that it generates among our students or our leadership candidates.
After session 8 with the Carol Dweck work, the mindset that we were introduced to, I was so inspired and energized and just invigorated with that. And so I presented to the cluster, but I also presented to my leadership team last summer. again, challenging my leadership team to say, we have to really encourage the children that even though they have struggles and challenges, that's part of learning, and they need to be persistent and they need to hang in there. So that was part one. And part two is I plan to use the Dweck book. I've purchased the book for my leadership team, and I'm very excited about that. This is one of the books that we'll be studying this summer and taking it to the next level. It really did inspire my teachers, and so I was pleasantly surprised and very happy to be walking down my hallways one day only to see an entire wall display of growth mindset in my third grade hall, where those teachers definitely absorbed what we had discussed and used that as a stepping stone to inspire the children.
I'm naturally an optimistic person and have kind of that natural growth mindset, but trying to figure out how to get that to my staff and to my students was a challenge. And I think until I came across the growth mindset literature through this PLC, the work of Dweck, the work of Milner, having those resources helped me build a strong foundation to launch a campaign in my school about growth mindset and really embracing that. Every day on our morning announcements, I read an excerpt from one of their books to help frame conversations for the students about, okay, here's just a little snippet of some advice, or here's some things to think about as you go through your day about how to embrace that growth mindset. And it's been really great because now the teachers are coming back to me after a year of reading these things saying, oh, I'm seeing this. It's starting to make sense to me. You know, really embracing how I'm trying to push my students from where they started to get them to improve to a certain level.
Being able to take that back, having resources for you at a PLC and take that back to the local school and work with our teachers in the different PLCs and to actually see teachers implement that in their classrooms where it drills down to students, where I'm hearing our students in our building say, I had a mindset moment. That really just, really just shows the value of PLCs.
When we started to talk about how has our work impacted our classrooms, I captured this quote that one of the teachers had put on the feedback sheet. And it said, as a staff, we know that if this is what we expect of our students, then we must be willing to engage in the work ourselves. And this PD has served as a site for us to do this so that we can better support our students.
I was so positively impacted by that and impressed with that work that I suggested to our PLC on the county level to present this at our summer leadership. And it did get accepted, so we're looking very much forward to presenting that to the district and all of the leaders in the district this summer. So that was just already a powerful impact that we've had from the experience here. To be able to redeliver that experience has been awesome.
National relationships began to form. Then they started going out to dinner together. These were things that EDC did not construct. Then the community took life on of its own. And that's where the magic happened.
We would never have become the family we are, especially with the universities, had we not been here. To be able to come here and sit a couple times a year, discuss what's going on at your university. So we start doing things together, which builds that strong collegial atmosphere.
To me, one of the really neat offshoots of this professional learning community is that it sort of created this circle with Gwinnett at the hub of the 5 university preparation program providers. And so what we've been able to do is bring our own strengths to one another's programs and strengthen those as well. And I think that that's been a really powerful output of this process for us. We aren't just folks who get together a couple of times a year. We're really friends who rely on each other in very real and important ways. And I don't see that going anywhere but forward from here.
There are relationships that I've developed here that I know I wouldn't have developed otherwise because I wouldn't have come into proximity with certain people. It's allowing me to be in a position moving forward to, I think, be a stronger knowledge resource for the field in terms of the lessons that I've learned and helping others to benefit from those lessons.
The real mark of success for the National PLC is that these people don't just work together when we are physically in the same space. that they're working together when we're not physically in the same space, that they've become thought partners with people that they never would have met had it not been for the National PLC, that they're working on projects together, that they're beginning to share problems of practice and share solutions to those problems with people that they otherwise may have never come in contact with had it not been for the National PLC.
We are working professionals, and so it would be hard for everyone to get off of work and come down to campus, to 40 miles to campus to participate in a PLC. What Dr. Mayfield has done is created an online sort of PLC, and it allows any of us who are able to participate in that particular session to do so just by logging on, and we use formats such as GoToMeeting, and it is just as effective, what we found, is if we were all sitting face to face.
The Georgia Professional Standards Commission approached the Georgia Educational Leadership Faculty Association, and they asked us if we would be interested in forming a virtual learning community with them and our school district partners. And because of our work here in Boston with the National Professional Learning Community and our local PLC, we were able to see the beauty and the value of that partnership. And to date, we have had 13 virtual learning community meetings with Georgia Educational Leadership faculty, their school district partners, and state agencies, all working collaboratively in Georgia to improve leader preparation for the ultimate goal of learning for our students.
I have seen a change in our program. I have seen students go out of our program, speaking very highly of our program. And when students speak highly of the program, they're a better recruitment tool than I would ever be. I think this has been a wonderful experience. I've enjoyed it. I'm going to miss it, miss seeing everyone. But as I said, we still be able to contact one another.
I know that our local PLC will keep going. I intentionally sat in with the Bowie State folks today because I really enjoy learning from them and their work in the urban schools. And we already have set up some emails and some conferences that we're all going to attend. I invited them to a conference that I'm hosting, and it's nice to have that camaraderie and have that list to be able to reach out and do things with.
I think all of the institutions involved in this project, and I'm not their spokesperson, but I think they would all say that they learned a lot, that their programs reflect what they learn, and that they're on a trajectory to continuous improvement, which I think is really important, and I think is the hallmark of this work. And I think institutions across this country that prepare teachers, that prepare principals, have the potential to learn a lot from what has gone on here over the past 4 years. The focus, for example, on graduate performance outcomes, looking at what principals, once they're in roles, can really do in schools, I think that's been a huge takeaway from this work, that these institutions are paying attention to that in ways that they did not prior to this work, that they're really invested in collecting the data that tell the story about what a principal who graduates from their program can do once they're in a school.
Bridging the gap between universities and school districts has always been a lifelong passion of mine because I always felt like there was just a huge gap. And so to see that come together and to see some immediate results has been truly rewarding experience.